Howdy-ho, Andrew here, aka Kelp here, aka Shadowson. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another episode of Tales of Neverwinter Nights. So we had ended on kind of a darker path last week with 3 stories revolving around drow sacrifices and the difference of them, I guess would be the best way to put it, between Maverlin sacrificing a paladin to Lana ended up sacrificing a beloved friend. And we're going to move forward from that. All right, so let's get started. Cottage of the Nostalgia by Maverlin. Maverlin entered the common room of the inn and found it crowded with customers. Pulling the hood of her cloak over her features, she slipped quietly out of the door and headed for the woods nearby. Moving with a determined stride, the Yathrin would not let the strange ache in her heart distract her. A soft sigh escaped Maverlin's lips as she scanned the area and found no one about. Slowing her pace a bit and keeping a wary eye for ambushes, she made her way north past a small bridge inhabited by trolls. Soon the Drowists came upon a large glen where the river flowed by in stately grandeur. Something about the area attracted her. It brought back a vague feeling of nostalgia that soothed the ache within. The stars looked like diamonds sparkling on the curtain of black velvet. Reflections from the water seemed to wink at Maverlin as she settled herself near the bank on an old fallen tree. Forgetting for a moment where and who she was, Maverlin leapt to her feet, startled at the sudden appearance of Theodo. Angry at her own lapse in caution, she snapped at the amused knight. "Why do all you males have to sneak up on me?" With a deep chuckle, the drow bowed and greeted her. "Venya Yathrin Maverlin, you seem far away. Is something troubling you?" Turning away from him to look once more upon the silent river, she answered quietly, "Nah, Theodo, I am merely reminiscing about another place and time." Moving quietly closer to the seated priestess, Theodo knelt down beside her. Concern showing in his voice, he inquired, "Are you certain that you are not keeping something hidden, Mav?" Turning to look at him, her eyes flashed momentarily, then darkened. "Nah, I cannot hide things from you, can I, brother? This place reminds me of Willow Springs. Some of the memories are not so fond." Growing quiet and distant once again, the drow sat there quietly. Curious to hear for the first time any mention of Maverlin's past, Theodo prompted her. "Willow Springs? Where is this place?" Theodo went silent and only listened to the Yathrin's husky tone as she spoke of things long forgotten. "It is where I am from originally, Theodo. I was not always drow. I was born human, as were you." She spoke bluntly and searched his face for a reaction. Realizing he stood on slightly shaky ground here, the Dark Knight acted surprised at this bit of news he already knew. Remembering the words of warning the Lady Rutha gave him, "Do not tell Mav you spoke with me. She is a very private person and would hate you for it." Abruptly standing and almost knocking Theodo over, Maverlin started pacing. "I just had a thought. I wish to build a small cottage here, Theodo." Her eyes shining with excitement, she stopped in front of him and looked down. "Axis, a small hideaway, so to speak, here on the surface. Where can you do it?" Looking about the clearing, her energy seemed to infect the Quella Saruk. Rising from the ground, Theodo also looked around, seeing in his mind the possibilities that existed. Taking on a business-like attitude, he conjured up a table and pulled out some parchment from his pack, asking the Yathrin what she wanted. Theodo started drawing up a set of blueprints, her eyes questioning him. Maverlin stepped over to see what magic spell he scribed. "My father would be proud of me for using the skills he taught me so long ago." Theodo smiled at the curious Yathrin. The smile went away when he noticed her eyes go dark and shadowed within hidden pain. "Do not speak to me of fathers," she said softly. "Mine has no pride in me, nor do I wish it." Theodo continued to work on the plans as Maverlin mentioned another reference to her past. Keeping his face expressionless, he showed the Drowists a rough draft of the cottage layout. Nodding at the drawing, Mauve's shadowed expression lightened as she smiled at the male. Using the local residents for slave labor and a minimal amount of magic, Theodo soon had a building underway. The Yathrin sat quietly and watched the proceedings. Her eyes glowed and sparkled with excitement as the cottage took shape. "Oh, and I wish a cellar, Theodo. Put the entrance to it over there." She laughed and pointed to where the living room would be. Keeping his mind on the business at hand, he merely nodded to indicate he heard her. Mauve let her thoughts wander, knowing he would complete the task efficiently. A decorative web. "It is done, Yathrin," a deep voice interrupted her from her trance. Looking about, Mauvelin's eyes widened in surprise. "So soon? Your father taught you well, Theodo." Rising from the table, she entered and moved through the small house, nodding in approval at what she saw. "Now it needs furnishing," she said with a smile. Gathering the energy for a major creation, Mauvelin began the incantation, deep in concentration. As the living room furniture appeared, she moved slowly in a circle. The combination of black leather and mahogany gave elegance to the room. A well-stocked bookcase appeared along the two overstuffed chairs, a lounge, and a couch. Carving of spiders crawled over the woodwork. The large walk-in fireplace to the north came to life with a burst of flame. An intricately detailed rug covered the trapdoor to the cellar. The woven strands of dye wool depicted the ceremony and sacrifice. Finished with the living area, Mauvelin headed south through the arched opening, entering the new room. She spoke thoughtfully. "I think this will be a nice dining kitchen area." Once more she gathered energy. A wood stove and icebox appeared behind the large mahogany bar. Graceful carvings of various spiders amid delicate strands of webbing completed the beautiful piece. A bay window alcove to the south looked out on the river that flowed serenely by. The enchanted glass darkened during the daylight hours to give the illusion of dusk within. The round mahogany table with matching chairs finished the arrangement. A cloth of gossamer spider webs covered the surface. Satisfied so far, the Yathrin nodded at her own handiwork and continued on. Moving to the small room east of the dining area, she spoke aloud to the male who stayed close by. "This shall be the guest room. I want it to be magnificent in case the Ilharis ever wishes to visit here." Murmuring the words to another incantation, a beautifully carved four-poster bed of black cherry appeared. A silky red sheets of finest satin shimmered like fire. A lovely quilt of various shades of red lay folded at the foot. Two pillows of matching color completed the ensemble. Curtains of silken spider webs draped the bed in gossamer strands of softest gray. A tapestry hung on the north wall, hiding a small door leading to the courtyard. The scene showed the Ilharis Jazradark standing in front of the spider throne in grandeur before her assembled house. A tiny alcove to the east wall held a small shrine of Teloth. Just to the south of the shrine stood a black lacquered screen of 3 panels. Painted spiders of various types and sizes gave the illusion of spinning their webs upon the shiny surface. Behind the screen squatted a large mithril tub upon 8 spider-shaped legs. Around the graceful curve of the edges rested the small spider of Onks. The ruby eyes glittered as if watching all of that occurred. Just south of the main doorway, the last piece appeared. An armoire carved from black cherry stood in stately elegance. Intricately carved scenes of female and male drow covered the surface. Closer inspection revealed the figures in an age-old dance of passion. Touching each of the newly created pieces as she returned to the living room, the Yathrin chanted a spell of permanency to bind them. Turning to the males who followed, Mauvelin smiled at the expression on his face. "Now for the cellar, my playroom." She chuckled with evil intent. Opening the trapdoor and levitating to the lower level, Mauve's eyes gleamed with amusement. Once again, magical energies gathered within the Yathrin as she began another incantation. Blocking off a section of the underground room with a wall of stone, she created several large racks for holding wine bottles. As she continued her work, Theodo slowly levitated to the cellar floor and watched. Turning about slowly and using erratic gestures, the room began to take on the appearance she wanted. Scones lined the walls, and fire sprang from the torches within. Several large iron rings set deep into the stone gave an indication of what games to expect. 2 7-foot-long posts of ironwood sprang into the being near the center. Approximately 4 feet apart, they stood as if to guard the area. Securely placed manacles and chains erupted from their solid surface. More walls of stone sanctioned off the southern end into 4 small holding cells. Iron doors blocked the entrances. Overhead dangled 2 small cages of iron. More instruments of torture appeared on a long wooden bench. Looking about the room with satisfaction, Marvelin spoke softly. "This should do for now. I can always obtain more items." Placing the spell of permanency on each item, she gave the male a smug look and pointed to the wine racks. "I will have Jari stock that section over there with his wines. I seem to have gained a fondness for them." Laughing, she headed back up to finish her last room. Private pleasures. Marvelin headed towards the door of the west wall of the living room. Looking behind her at the male that followed, she smiled and laughed softly. "Na, Theodore, this time you will wait out here." Shutting the door behind her on his startled expression, she turned to survey her bedroom chamber. Visualizing exactly what she wanted, the Yathrin began to gather the energy required. Another shrine to Loth appeared on the north wall, a twin to the one in the guest room. Weaving her spells, Marvelin created a small pocket of space within the stone behind her altar to hide certain valuables from prying eyes. Just east of the alcove there appeared a wonderfully detailed tapestry of the house Relithar, lit with the many-colored lights of fairy fires. The delicate strands spun from the finest spider silk seemed to glow from within. All around the room, throw rugs and black lambskin formed the wooden floor of inlaid ironwood. The carved mahogany bed dominated the room with 4 posts standing guard. The detailed craftsmanship of tortured slaves withered about each sturdy pole, and curtains of silver gossamer draped in luxurious splendor. Blood-red silks and shiny black satins shimmered with the promise of sensuous delight. The rich, dark color of mahogany enhanced the room further with matching nightstands and armoire. Intricately carved figures danced across their surface in worship to the demon goddess. Against the east wall, a unique massage table appeared. Covered in the velvety fur of sable, a hinged center allowed it to fold up and lock in place. Loops of soft leather adorn each of the corners. A slow, wicked smile of each curved the Yathrin's lips, thinking of the use she planned for it. Turning to the north wall near the west end, Marvelin shaped an arched opening within the stone, allowing access to the outside. Resting only for a short time, she drew upon her inner powers and once more began to chant words of magic. Stepping through the opening, walls of natural-looking stone rose around her and sealed off a 10 square foot of area. Fairy lights danced in an array of colors about the tiny cave-like room. A roughly round-shaped pool opened up near her feet, started shallow, then increasing in depth towards the back. A ledge to sit upon circled the inner edge of the tiny pool, fed by the sparkling waters of the river that flowed nearby and continuous warm by magic. The bathing chamber gave the appearance of a lovely underground grotto. Sealing the magic permanently, Mauve returned to the bedchamber and placed a curtain of darkness in the archway to hide the grotto from casual view. The wall seemed empty next to it. Axis, a dresser to match the rest. That's what is missing, she murmured to herself and began chanting once again. Looking more like a large vanity table, a dresser and chair appeared. Their carved surfaces of mahogany continued the motif of spiders, slaves, and drow. A mirrored piece of glass stood watch upon the vanity surface. She finished her work with more spells of permanency and turned around to survey the chamber. Her little hideaway complete now, Marvelin returned to where she left Theodore and found him speaking to Jahari. "Just the male I wish to speak with." Marvelin leaves a note right at the end here, so I'm going to read the note here. Note: there are several missing posts between the one above and the next one. To sum up, several weeks have gone by since the cottage was built, and Marvelin has returned to House Relithar to handle her priestess duties. She has not had a chance to return to the cottage since it was completed. And that was a little departure from the normal drow society to a more personal memory or posts by Marvelin, creating a cottage. And in later days, when I joined the guild with Drassin and other people, I remember where she had, on the map, where she had put this cottage. She used, even when she became an Ilharis herself, she continued on with the cottage as a roleplay mechanism, because the one drawback of Neverwinter Nights in AOL, and I always felt this was very short-sighted of an AOL, is they never built an expansion going into the Drowlands, the Underdark. Now you have to understand, AOL baffles me to this day. This game is the first MMORPG, even though we didn't call it an MMORPG at the time. That term became commonplace in Ultima Online. But this was the first MMORPG. And AOL made a monster amount of money off this game. Because like I've talked about the pricing, it was $20 for 20 hours for AOL, not just for Neverwinter Nights, but for all of AOL. And then it was $2.95 an hour for Americans and $3.95 an hour for Canadians. So it wasn't uncommon. Like, I knew people that racked up bills, $1,500 bills over a month period. I never did that. My largest was $800, and that made me physically ill, and was one of the reasons why I ended up quitting the game. But so AOL was making monstrous amounts of money off of Neverwinter Nights. I've heard speculation of as high as $5 million a month. Now, I don't know if that's true, if that's exaggerated. This was in the 90s, but even if it was $1 million a month, that's insane money for the 1990s. And yet they would not put a single cent back into this game. They would not expand on it. And the players, we were asking for them to expand on it, and they never would do it. So I was always very confused with AOL on this. But so what Marvelin had done is, since we could never go into the Underdark, she picked a square in Neverwinter Woods, and that's where she said her cottage was. Now, obviously, another person coming through there had no clue of that, because you could not place buildings into the map of Neverwinter Nights like you could in Ultima Online or Star Wars Galaxies. You couldn't do that. So people would go through that square and they'd never have any idea. But for Marvelin, and for the people that knew Marvelin, this is where her cottage was. And that's where the roleplay was. And yeah, so interesting on how it came to be and how she picked the spot and everything. And just a little bit of fluff. You can't always be serious. Sometimes you just need fluff. And anyway, that's my video for this week. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Takes 1 second to subscribe, costs you absolutely nothing, helps me immensely. Just hit the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen. If you're watching this on Rumble, please follow my channel. Always feel free to leave a comment. I encourage everybody to leave a comment. Not only does it get us interacting, it really does help me with the YouTube algorithm and getting more eyes on my videos. And as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.